yeah.
Giving rise to allegations that he's using the highest office in the land to enrich himself and his family.
The logic is basically like, everything's corrupt. So if everything's corrupt, you might as well pick the most corrupt person.
All right.
We are going to Washington, D.C., and we are going to drain the swamp.
In this episode of Fault Lines, we check into one of the swamp's finest venues to examine the charges that Trump is profiting from the presidency and violating the Constitution of the United States. Our investigation begins just a few blocks from the White House, at the Trump International Hotel in Washington. It's housed in the old post office, a historic building owned by the US government. Dear Sharif Qaddous, welcome to Trump DC. I wish you... Back in 2012, the Trump Organization won a competitive bid to lease the old post office from the government's General Services Agency. Barely 2 weeks before the 2016 election, it reopened as a hotel. Expensive. The Washington operation is just one of the dozens of luxury hotels, condos, resorts, and golf courses that bear the Trump brand, from Las Vegas to Vancouver, Manila to Dubai. Before it launched, critics thought the hotel project would be too expensive to prove profitable. But what most didn't anticipate was that the owner would win the White House. We're in the Ivanka Suite at the Trump International Hotel. It's named for the president's daughter. It costs $1,465 to stay here, and that's on the luxury suites. But like so many visitors to the hotel, whether politicians, tourists, or journalists like us, the only reason we decided to come here is because it's owned by the President of the United States. When he was elected, Trump owned more than 500 companies, mostly under the umbrella of the Trump Organization.
And the President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
In a controversial decision, Trump refused to divest from his companies. Instead, he put them into a trust.
These papers are just some of the many documents that I've signed, turning over complete and total control.
I spent 30 years of my life tracking the man because I thought he was culturally significant. I did not expect him to become politically significant.
Investigative journalist David K. Johnston has long reported on the ups and downs of Trump's business ventures.
You know, when Donald Trump said he was giving up running the businesses and putting it into a trust, I literally erupted in laughter. Donald Trump doesn't run any businesses. Donald Trump is not a competent businessman. He leaves it up to other people.
You're fired. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
And furthermore, the trust that Donald set up, his sons have said they tell Dad about what's going on in the business.
To avoid the possibility of conflicts of interest, previous US presidents put their financial assets into a blind trust to ensure they wouldn't know how their wealth was handled. Those who owned businesses sold them.
Jimmy Carter had to sell his 2-bit business after putting it in a trust. And nobody for a minute thought that his little peanut warehouse in rural Georgia was going to have any influence on government policy.
Can Donald Trump actually take profits out?
He can reach in and withdraw money at any time. Whether or not he's done so, we don't know. But this is not anything at all like a blind trust. This is like what you expect to see in a family business posing as a country.
Let's hear it for the first family.
Right after Donald Trump was sworn in at the Capitol, his motorcade went to the White House. He had the presidential limousine known as the Beast stop. He stopped right in front of the Trump International Hotel. He was sending a very cool pay tribute to me, and bingo, that hotel suddenly was full of business.
Zach Everson is a freelance journalist who's created a whole new beat out of covering the Trump International Hotel and the people who patronize it. On your Twitter feed, you've kind of highlighted a lot of what's happening on social media with the hotel. So what are some of the kind of ones that stand out?
This was a picture I found on Instagram, and he was posing with the founder of a Russian nail art chain. And she had tagged him. I mean, it's got the Instagram account, EMB USA. And the caption said in English, "Thank you to our Russian ambassador," Russian flag, in the USA, American flag, "for a warm welcome in Washington, D.C. Maine's governor, LePage, has been here. Rudy Giuliani is here a lot. So this was a guy, Instagram handle Classic Pete, and his mayor. And then, hashtag MAGA, hashtag Saturdays are for the boys.
Trump's financial disclosure forms indicate that the hotel brought in more than $40 million in 2017. According to federal documents reported by the Washington Post, the hotel made a remarkable
Expected to lose about $2 million, and instead it made $2 million. So that's a $4 million swing. It has one of the highest room rates in DC, it's been reported, but one of the lowest occupancy rates. And that to me says that they have a set market of people who are gonna come here and they don't need to necessarily price their rooms competitively.
So would you say Donald Trump and his family are profiting from the presidency?
Through the hotel, clearly, yeah.
And part of the reason they're making good money is because Trump is president.
I think that's why a lot of people do come here.
Since the hotel opened, the president has visited at least 10 times, and there are streams of evidence that Trump family members, administration officials, Republican politicians, and lobbyists all make appearances. Federal Election Commission filings show that Republican candidates' committees and powerful donor groups have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars at Trump DC. Foreign governments, including Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, and Romania, have also made a showing. Kuwait has celebrated its National Day at the hotel 2 years running. In June, the Philippines Embassy hosted an Independence Day celebration. The ambassador explained his choice of venue to a Filipino news agency.
Having it in a hotel that happens to have his name is not necessarily the end-all and be-all, but it's a statement. It's a statement that we have a good relationship with this president.
Whatever the intent, events like this have raised criticism that foreign governments are patronizing the hotel to curry was held as the Philippines lobbied for a free trade agreement with the United States. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte had proposed the two countries explore a bilateral deal when he met with President Trump at the end of 2017. So take back Congress, they'll be able to investigate whether the president is profiting from his office. Trump has been holding rallies across the country to support Republican candidates and has come here to West Virginia. It's a state Trump won in 2016, and his supporters far outnumber his critics. They don't care about his conflicts of interest.
I think people in general feel more confident in him, and so businesses around all have picked up because they feel more secure.
What about Trump himself? He hasn't divested from his business. Some people accuse him of profiting from the presidency. What do you say to those critics?
It's what it is. He is a businessman, but he also understands what the businesses need to keep going and growing.
No one we spoke to at this rally seemed worried by the possibility that the president's business dealings may well have put him on a collision course with the Constitution.
My name is Laura Trump, and I am so proud to introduce myself as the daughter-in-law of our president, Donald J. Trump. Despite the haters in Hollywood, despite the obstructionist Democrats, despite the fake news media, Donald Trump is draining the swamp in Washington, D.C., ladies and gentlemen.
A lot of people voted for a wrecking ball. They voted for someone who would blow up the system. In fact, in the guise of voting for an anti-corruption candidate, what you got was a pretty extreme candidate, and that happens all the time when people vote, when they go to extremes.
He has developed a cult of people who really believe that he is their savior. He's not. He is their enemy. He has no regard for anyone else, including his own family. But he has persuaded a whole lot of people who feel powerless, voiceless, and who've been damaged by the policies that began with Ronald Reagan in 1981.
Indeed, the charges that the President of the United States is profiting from his office, even if proven in a court of law, seem unlikely to go down as the most scandalous legacy of Trump's presidency.
We've eliminated a record number of job-killing regulations, and Republicans have passed the biggest tax cuts and reform.